Sports Scene, Hampton Road's premier interview show with Greg Bicouvaris, each Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11.
And you look at that, 4-4 at home, which is just average, 4-3-1 on the road. I mean, you're not going to win any games like that. They were not the same team after they beat the Packers, yet the Packers were a totally different team.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic and listen weekly as Greg interviews distinguished guests with excellent commentary and insight. Sports Scene, Saturdays at 10 a.m. on the Lighthouse 100.1 FM.
Mark your calendar for October 18th through the 20th as Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church presents the Newport News Greek Festival Fall Edition, an indoor event inside the Hellenic Center. Enjoy Greek food, beverages, desserts, dancing, arts and crafts, and much more. Located on 60 Traverse Road off exit 258B on I-64 with free admission and parking. Log on to newportnewsgreekfestival.org. See you October 18th through 20th for the Newport News Greek Festival Fall Edition.
Opa! From Chesapeake, Virginia, the Lighthouse 100.1 presents Sports Scene. Sports Scene features local, regional, and nationally acclaimed guests and excellent interviews. Follow Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic. Now here is Greg Bicouvaris.
Sports Scene, midweek online, Saturday in the radio from 10 to 11 on 100.1 FM, The Lighthouse, 1010 AM, tunein.com, type in WPMH in the search bar to listen Saturday at 10, Greg Bicouvaris along with Joe Daniel. Sports Scene is an interview show, and also watch sports highlights on nnpstv.com, where we're focusing on DJ Dozier for the month of October. Tell your friends about gjbtv.com and click the YouTube link on the homepage for archived audio and video. Twitter @GregBic, @GJB Radio, and you can see the rest of my Twitter handles on gjbtv.com in the contact section. Thank you to our military for what you do 24/7. Guest lineup presented by Outback Steakhouse in Kempsville, now delivering in Virginia Beach. Sponsors on gjbtv.com, marketplace sponsors, and Hampton Roads onlinemall.com. Phone line presented by Me Casita. Show presented by hrsmhof.com, the premier sports media hall of fame in the state. Major League Baseball postseason, college football, the NFL, a lot is going on. Great interviews, business segments, highlights, commentary, what tees me off. Thank you for making the habit to listen to Sports Scene weekly. We love our regulars, newcomers, and tourists. Stay tuned.
When it comes to automobile service in Hampton Roads, Fink's Car Care is the destination locals have counted on for decades. Family owned and operated, they specialize in transmission service, oil changes, state inspection, radiator service, tires, alignments, and showcase Win Automotive products. Fink's does it all. Military and senior discounts are available. Like them on Facebook and visit them at 2711 Victory Boulevard in Portsmouth. For more, log on to finkscarcare.com and call 485-5555 today. Catch up on archived editions of Sports Scene by going to gjbtv.com and clicking the YouTube image on the homepage. Now back to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris.
And welcome back to Sports Scene. I want to thank our good friends at Outback Steakhouse in Kempsville and Virginia Beach, now delivering. Go by and see Mike and the staff. Spacious, nice dining area, bar, lunch and dinner daily. Burgers, steaks, soups, salads, appetizers, all the good food, desserts, special occasions, holiday parties at 1255 Fordham Drive. Give them a call at 523-4832. Outback Steakhouse, delivering in Virginia Beach in the Kempsville area. Let's welcome Grant Paulsen. A lot of you might remember him when he was a kid on the David Letterman show. He's been a radio host, TV host in the DMV. Grant, welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Very good, my friend. Tell the fans what you're doing today. Of course, you're on 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the DMV on 106.7.
Yeah, today we're out at the Capitals practice facility as they get ramped up to begin week one here defending their Stanley Cup title. So I'll spend some time with some of the players and coaches on the staff at the media luncheon. But it's been a hectic, a busy, fun several months here in D.C., obviously, with another Nats season having come and gone, the Caps having finally hoisted the Stanley Cup for the first time in franchise history, the Redskins now all alone in first place 4 weeks into the season, and the Wizards getting ready to get started and tip off their year on the 18th.
Yeah, and of course you were involved with the arena football as well, correct?
Yes, I call the play-by-play for the Washington Valor, who won the championship this year. Ted Leonsis' own team that plays at Capital One Arena where the Caps and the Wizards play, the Arena Football League. It's at a point now where they need to add some teams and probably get some more interest on a national level. There were only 4 teams in the league this year, but yeah, the Valor in their second year in existence were able to make the playoffs and went on a really unlikely run to win a championship, so it was neat.
Before we highlight the Caps and the other teams, let's talk about the Nationals. They just ended their season on Sunday, kind of a big disappointment. Let's start off with our own right here from Virginia Beach, Zimmerman, his future, and the Nats' future in general.
Well, I mean, Ryan Zimmerman's going to be on the team next year, barring something crazy that nobody foresees coming. He's under contract again, and he's winding down what was a $100 million contract signed several years ago, so he'll be their starting first baseman, and when he's healthy and in the lineup, he hits and he produces. The problem for him, obviously, as everybody back home for him knows, it's staying on the field. He's had one injury kind of after another and just a lack of health over the last several seasons, really only the one big monster campaign in 2017. Not coincidentally, that year, the Nats offensively were a juggernaut, and because of him largely as an MVP candidate for much of the season, overachieved early in the year and ended up having a terrific season where they won the division. When he wasn't himself in 2018, and it wasn't just his fault, they weren't quite the same. Bryce Harper struggled. Daniel Murphy was coming back from injury. They ultimately traded him. It was a real disappointing season, I think, largely predicated on how many man games they missed. But that can't be the only excuse. They didn't get the starting pitching that they needed outside of Max Scherzer, with the lack of availability of Steven Strasburg and down seasons for Tanner Roark and Gio Gonzalez. The rotation was a bit of a mess. The bullpen, again, dealt with injury problems. Sean Doolittle missed a lot of time. Kelvin Herrera, who they traded for early in the year, ended up getting hurt, was ineffective compared to his days with the Royals. So I think the bullpen disappointed. Mike Rizzo thought he had built something really special and unique there, and just about everyone who was important, including Ryan Madsen, who would ultimately get traded, missed time as well. And they just didn't play at the level they needed to. They had a first-year manager in Davey Martinez who went through some growing pains and wasn't able to touch the buttons he needed to keep them on top of the division. So they'll go back to the drawing board, but Zimmerman will absolutely be a part of the equation at first base. The big question is whether or not Bryce Harper, who won the MVP award in 2015 and has been a fan favorite over the last several years as a superstar, is coming back.
Right. It seemed like he got the crowd charged up at the All-Star game, of course, with the home run hitting contest. And the All-Star game was a true success in Washington. And the Nationals kept on saying, well, we're within a few games here. Let's try to get it together after the All-Star game, and never did. And then things started kind of domino effect. You saw the argument between Scherzer and Strasburg. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it seemed like that big of a deal at a time. Then, of course, Martinez being in the newspaper about radio, TV, whatever, the internet, about not having a firm grasp on the bullpen, then people talking behind his back. It just seemed like really until maybe the month of August, the team started coming together.
Yeah, toward the end of the season, they started playing better baseball. I believe that if the year was longer, that would have continued, because I think that they did figure some things out. The good sign for Martinez and the Nationals was that he didn't lose the clubhouse. I mean, years past, a guy like Matt Williams, you may remember, who ultimately lost his job, certainly clearly did, and he was overmatched when it came to managing the personalities. I genuinely believe the players really like Dave Martinez and want to play for him, so that's a very good sign. But specific to this season and kind of everything going off the rails, I think what you got was a scenario where, as you said, after the All-Star break, everyone just kind of kept waiting for that 8, 9, 10-game winning streak, and it never came. And I think the players were as surprised as everyone else, but I think guys maybe were waiting, looking around, saying, well, it's all right, we'll get our cast back. Eventually we're going to get Daniel Murphy on the field. Eventually we're going to get them back. And eventually this hero will come in wearing his cape and save us. And when those guys came back, it took them a little while to get going again, and they weren't 100% right away. And they just never were what they were supposed to have been. And the Nationals couldn't capitalize on the momentum in town of the Stanley Cup in the spring, and more importantly, as you said, of the All-Star break, even though Harper really got going after that home run derby.
Right, and the attendance wasn't as good as it's been in the past, of course. That had to do probably with losing. Had a lot of rain delays. Just a really kind of a Debbie Downer type of year. Never really got grasp of the season. They started off very strong. The Braves came out of nowhere. The Phillies kind of peaked and valleyed. But it's not going to be easy if there's no Harper next year and the Braves getting better. This is not a guarantee that they're going to be what they had even in 2017 again.
I agree with you. I think the Phillies are not going away either. I would add them to that list. Mm-hmm. They're only going to get better. I'd be shocked if they don't sign either Manny Machado or Bryce Harper this offseason. I think one of those two guys will end up there. I think they've got the money to spend, and they're on the brink of being a real contender. You look at the rotation they've started to assemble. They've got some really good young pitching led by Aaron Nola, who I think is going to be the best pitcher in the division over the next 10 years. And they've got a foundation of young players that they've built with Odubel Herrera, even though he had a down year in the outfield, and Rhys Hoskins and Scott Kingery, who are all going to perform at a level to help them win a division in the next couple of years at some point. You look at Atlanta, as you said, and they got the very likely Rookie of the Year over Juan Soto and Ronald Acuna, and they've got more young pitching in their system and in AAA and in the big leagues where they've got a young all-star in Mike Foltynewicz as anybody in the sport. So they're not going to be an easy out either. Good news for the Nationals, whether they re-sign Bryce Harper or not, is that they are built to be very competitive in the next several seasons. If you're the Phillies or the Braves, similarly that the Nationals are going to be capable of winning 90 to 96 games, health dependent, over the next few seasons as well. Let's say they sign Harper. You're keeping a guy going into his prime who could win another MVP award or two and hit 40 homers a season. And he played in 159 games for the first time in his career this year, which is a good sign. If they don't keep Harper, and by the way, I wouldn't, then they've got the money to spend on starting pitching, which is a need, to anchor their bullpen even further, which is something that they should do. They could go out and sign a starting second baseman, which they don't have right now with Murphy in Chicago playing in the playoffs with the Cubs. They could bring in DJ LeMahieu, say, from Colorado. They could add a catcher with Matt Wieters hitting free agency, a big need for them. They did not get enough production from that position this year. They could do all of that with the money that they wouldn't be spending on Bryce Harper. And not to mention that you've got Juan Soto coming off of a year where he very likely will finish second in Rookie of the Year balloting. He was great. You've got Victor Robles, who's going to graduate officially here this offseason and become an everyday major leaguer next year. Adam Eaton's under contract. Michael Taylor's under contract. So you got 4 quality outfielders for your major league group of 3 next year. I think they're set to move on without Harper and still be in a very good shape. But one way or the other, whether they bring him back or not, I think they're going to be very good. And they got a shot to win the division next year. They're going to need more luck and some more fortuitous bounces and perform better than they did this season.
Right, talking to Grant Paulsen, you hear him from 10 to 2. We'll get all the specifics as Twitter in just a moment on WJFK in the DMV. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us. And here's my last thing about the Nationals before we talk about the Redskins for a second. I know you're busy, is that, sure, you've got Scherzer, you've got Strasburg, who's been up and down. He's not consistent as far as injuries. He's getting older. His arm is getting weaker. He's still solid, but again, he's been up and down. Then you got Rourke, who you really can't trust. You have a position maybe at 3, 4, and 5. Fetty has been very erratic, and some other pitchers too. I think that's the biggest thing is the offseason. I think you hit the nail on the target is get more pitching, especially at 3, 4, and 5. To me, Rourke at best is a 4 or 5 pitcher.
Yeah, that's the difference between, for me, the contending teams and everybody else. And the teams that are going to have a shot to win not only a division, which is nice, but in the playoffs and everybody else is the quality of your starting pitching, the ability to get swings and misses. You see it at the top of the rotation with Strasburg and with Scherzer, and in the bottom of the rotation for the Nationals, they just leave little to be desired. They don't have that depth. A couple of names to keep an eye on. Joe Ross coming back healthy, was throwing 97 miles an hour late in the season. I think he's going to win one of those jobs out of spring training in the rotation on the back end. Now, that's going to come with inning restrictions and probably some kind of like a September shutdown, I would think, or maybe a move to the bullpen for the stretch run of the year. But he'll be in that rotation. You mentioned Eric Fetty, who's a former first-round pick who's gotten a few opportunities over the end of the last couple seasons and overcome some injuries. Eric Fetty is in a spot where I think he could have probably solidified himself a real chance coming out of spring training as let's say, the 4th or 5th guy. I don't think he necessarily did that. I think he'll be in the competition. Rourke's going to make the rotation. Obviously, he's an innings-eating horse. The question being, do they trust him to bounce back and be 3 or 4, or will they just slot him to the back end as an innings-eating 5 type? I think that's a fair question to ask. But they're going to have to add somebody. And I don't mean just a guy who can pitch 6 innings at a time and give you a chance to win. They got to make a trade or sign a player. There aren't that many quality arms available. I think Patrick Corbin might be the best out of Arizona, so that would be a target. I saw that Dallas Keuchel from the Houston Astros, Dallas Keuchel or Charlie Morton from the Houston Astros are both available. Those guys to me would make a lot of sense, but you need to add a legitimate middle of the rotation starter who could pitch in a game 3 of a division series for you. They've never really had that. They've always needed that, and lacking that might be the biggest reason why they haven't advanced to a league championship series. So I would do everything I could if I'm Mike Rizzo to bring in that pitcher, and it might mean trading a couple pieces from my system to go get a controllable, fringe all-star type starting pitcher.
The Redskins, the last topic before we let you go, I know you're busy. Redskins 2-1. The negative thing is they've got a bye week, and here's the thing: they've got two tough teams. They got a Saints team who's almost very difficult to win on the road, especially on prime time, coming off a nice win as well over the Giants. Then you take on the Panthers, who are always very solid with Cam Newton for the most part. So it's going to be a tough 2 weeks coming up. Not to mention October, November, December, Grant, no break at all.
No, absolutely not. The bye came very early for them, and I don't like it for them, but it came, frankly, at a decent time if you just look at their injury situation, where Trent Williams had to have a procedure this week, and Adrian Peterson's dealing with a bum ankle. Chris Thompson missed a little practice time as they got back to work yesterday. So they were missing some bodies. They already missed a game at left guard from Sean Laval and had to move their center, Chase Roulier over to guard and start Tony Bergstrom a backup. So I think their offensive line and their running back benefited immensely from the time off. They're going to miss having a bye week several weeks from now and wish that they hadn't already had one. But as you said, the Saints are a great test. I'm very excited for the game. I'll be in New Orleans. I think that the Saints are going to reveal once and for all how improved this defense is, how good this defense is. Everyone is right now very excited, and they should be. But the crowning of this defense after 3 games against Sam Bradford, who's already been benched by a terrible 0-4 team, Andrew Luck, whose shoulder is still healing to the point where he's not throwing downfield at the end of games or bringing on a quarterback Chuck Hail Marys, and Aaron Rodgers, who could barely limp around at FedEx Field as he got beat by 2 touchdowns. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves just a little bit. I'm very excited like everyone else, and I'm very hopeful that the Redskins' defense is much improved and better, and their defensive line is clearly well built now with a couple first-rounders over the last 2 years from Alabama, and John Allen and Deron Payne, and a third-year player in Matt Ioannidis, who was once drafted in the 5th round, who's been phenomenal. But they haven't played an elite quarterback who's healthy, and they haven't played a offense that's potent, and they haven't played an offense with a bunch of weapons, and all those things are going to happen in New Orleans, in the Dome, on the road, in primetime. So if you can beat the Saints and get to 3-1, and particularly in a game where your defense looks sharp, or by way of a shootout, which a lot of people are skeptical that they can win with Alex Smith as their quarterback, I think it would be a really revealing, exciting thing for that building at Redskins Park to know that maybe they are a contender in the NFC this year, but they haven't been 3-1 since 2011, so there's a lot of work to do before they do that.
And as we've seen, that can affect the home crowd the following week against Carolina, kind of like the Colts game, kind of low energy. We shall see. Finally, leave us with your Twitter handles, how people can hear your show, and as a kid, real quick, your Letterman experience.
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is @GrantH.Paulsen, if people want to follow me there. The show is obviously 10 to 2, as you mentioned, on a 106.7 The Fan in Washington, D.C. So if you're in Northern Virginia or Maryland, D.C. area, you can listen on the radio on 106.7, or you can obviously stream the show anytime on your phone on the radio.com app. But the experience, it was phenomenal. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I didn't know at the time. First time I went on was when I was 11, and the last time I went on was when I was 17. I ended up going on 6 different times as kind of a, in the same way that, on these late night shows, they'll have some kid on who knows a lot about, like, the presidents of the United States. It's just kind of a human interest thing, novelty act. But I had a lot of fun and got to meet some cool celebrities who were there those nights that I was there to do the show. And David Letterman was always very nice to me. So I had a cool experience. I didn't know at the time necessarily how big of a deal it was, particularly the first couple times. But it really was awesome.
Yeah, I think I first heard about you when I went to George Mason. My younger sister, she lives in White Marsh, and that's a great experience. All the best with the Caps today, and, of course, I hope to see you at the Panthers game in October.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Grant. Very nice talking to you, and have a great rest of the day.
All right, take care, Greg. Thanks.
Thank you. My pleasure. Grant Paulsen right there, of course, right there from the DMV, 106.7 in Washington, D.C., 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. right here on Sports Scene. Stay tuned.
Mark your calendar for October 18th through the 20th as Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church presents the Newport News Greek Festival Fall Edition, an indoor event inside the Hellenic Center. Enjoy Greek food, beverages, desserts, dancing, arts and crafts, and much more. Located on 60 Traverse Road off exit 258B on I-65 2024 with free admission and parking. Log on to newportnewsgreekfestival.org. See you October 18th through 20th for the Newport News Greek Festival Fall Edition.
Opa! The best guests appear here on Sports Scene. Now back to Greg in the Hampton Roads OnlineMall.com studios.
And welcome back to Sports Scene. Want to talk to a person we've had on Sports Scene on several radio stations, on Sports Highlights as well, Andy Hilton from Recruit 757. Andy, how are you?
I'm doing well, Greg. Thanks for having me on Sports Scene.
Very good, very good. In the month of October, which is a big month for high school football, we talked to you a few months ago, and things are starting to evolve and take shape right now.
Absolutely they are, and especially on the peninsula, we're seeing some changes in the hierarchy of things. It's going to be interesting to see now that we're at their midway point how that's going to play out for the rest of the season.
Certainly is as well. And one thing, too, Andy, this year has been superseded by weather and a lot of injuries.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny how weather, just a couple of weeks into the season, we had Hurricane Florence come in, which postponed every game in the entire region for a week. And I think it's funny you mentioned injury because the cramping that we usually see happen in August, we saw running into late September due to conditioning, due to hydration. It's been a season that's been different from all angles.
It's taken a lot of momentum away. You know, you talk about Mike Smith having the suspension. He did make up the Denby game, of course, recently, so he really only missed 4 full games, but it's been like that. Nobody's really gotten their groove on. Nobody's really gotten momentum because, like you said, of the interruption of the weather. Some people had bye weeks early. Some people started way back in August before Labor Day. So this is really a time now with the weather behind you that we should see things come into shape. The thing I don't like is the makeup games are like on random weeknights when they're not big for high school football, and that's not helping attendance either.
No, it didn't help attendance. In fact, when you include the South Side, we had almost 10 straight days. Sunday was the only day we didn't play. 10 straight days of football. We had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. Monday football, Tuesday football, and I'm just talking about up through last week. And then, of course, with Todd and Darling hosting games on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we really, across a 2-week period, had a Sunday off and a Wednesday off. And that was it. And it's funny that you mentioned how the schedules have changed. Phoebus, we're at the first week of October. Phoebus has played 3 games this year, and that's it. They're 2-1. They took a loss to Lake Taylor last week. And it's funny to think that the season's going to be over in about 5 weeks, and they still have 7 games to play.
Exactly. That's the thing, too, because they're going to be tired limping into the postseason where you try to get fresh. There have been weeks in the past in the VHSL that some teams from the peninsula had a week off before the postseason. That might not be the case at all for anybody this year throughout the entire state.
Absolutely. That's been the pretty much the strategy for the Peninsula District. They don't play in what we call week 0, the first week of the season. There are 11 weeks to play 10 games. Peninsula teams generally leave week 0 alone. They play in week 0. I apologize. I flipped that around. They don't play in week 11, so they do have a week off, as you mentioned, to play in the playoffs. That week is being used as well as we've seen, Monday or Tuesday night games just to fill in the schedule, and Phoebus will have a tough row to hoe. They'll make the playoffs. It's highly likely they'll make the playoffs in Class 3, but their seeding is up in the air, and certainly their ability to play at a high level of competition once the playoffs arrive is a big question mark.
Talking to Andy Hilton from Recruit 757. We'll get his Twitter handle and all his relevant information in just a few moments. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us. For more, go to gjbtv.com. Hit the YouTube link for archive shows of commercials and sports scene. Andy, let's talk about who's hot, who's not on the South Side. We always start off with Oscar Smith.
Well, Oscar Smith is undefeated. They handled their game against an out-of-state opponent for the opener, and they've cruised so far. They lost to Kings Fork in the season finale last year to stop their 99-game winning streak in the Southeastern District. That would have been 100. Kings Fork does not look up to the challenge this year. In fact, in that district, it looks like Indian River is going to be the big title contender as far as the district goes. Both of those teams are undefeated, and both of those teams, of course, have a game coming up in just a couple of weeks. That showdown, the winner of that is going to win the Southeastern District more than likely.
Very good. Talking to Andy Hilton from Recruit 757. And, of course, to me, the Southside schools always have the advantage because when they host a playoff game, they host at home. Of course, that can never be underestimated when a peninsula school, let's say like a Woodside, has to go to a Lansdowne like last year where Lansdowne beat Woodside. When you have a home field advantage, you really have a home field advantage on the south side.
And Todd and Warner Stadium, Bailey Field for the Bay Rivers teams, and Darling, really, as you say, other than for York, where Bailey Field is at their school, there is no home field advantage for Peninsula teams because they have the convenience of playing in one location. That convenience ends up being a disadvantage when it comes to the playoffs.
Very good. Talking to Andy Hilton from Recruit 757. Let's get to the Peninsula. Mike Smith finally came back. You know, it's kind of awkward because one of his assistants quit early on in the year. I'm not sure how that affected the relationship between him and Mike Smith. It probably didn't help at all because even Mike said, the players don't know who to turn to. These are kids. These are minors. They don't have that role model as an adult. They've got assistants, but when your assistants start quitting on you, on the head coach at a vulnerable time, it makes it difficult to come back from anything.
You know, the funny thing is Danny Mitchell is the coach you speak of. Danny, I know him personally. He's a fantastic guy. I don't know the circumstances around him quitting. I can say that I went to the game last Tuesday. Again, we're talking about games on odd nights. Heritage played Hampton on Tuesday night at Todd Stadium. Hampton looked awful. Danny Mitchell was not on the sideline. The Crabbers have struggled. Mike Smith is going to have to rally the troops, and he doesn't have a Daz Newsome-type player. He doesn't have a Javon Quillen type player. Quillen's at Virginia Tech now. Daz Newsome's at UNC now. There is no real star player on this team, so the coach is going to have to do a lot more with a lot less in order to bring them back in line and have them playoff ready when that time comes.
Right. No Ronald Curry either. For Mike Smith, who's won a dozen state championships since 1971, they did beat Denby recently, and they will evolve. They will probably make the postseason because, again, Andy, I'm not a big fan of this, but when you start making postseasons with losing records, it kind of dilutes the water, dilutes the playing field. But with so many teams making it, I guess you have really no choice.
Yeah, it's highly inclusive, and we've been through the math before, but to make it simple for the listeners, if you don't have an 18 playoff, you generally end up with a 14 playoff, which goes from being inclusive to being exclusive, and we've had problems in the past with a 14 playoff at a particular level, excluding teams that are 7-3, 8-2, so they decide to reward teams rather than discourage teams. If you went to 6, it would give you a round of 4 to open, and your top 2 teams would have byes. Teams don't always want to have a bye when you've got a team with momentum coming in with a lower seed and having a win in the previous week. There's just no simple way to make this work, and you certainly can't predict from year to year how many 6, 7, 8, 9-win teams you're going to have coming into the playoffs. So this is the least of all evils, yet you have teams with 1 or 2 or 3 wins at times in certain classifications making the playoffs, and that makes it completely awkward and sometimes ugly when it comes to first-round matchups.
Yeah, speaking of first-round matchups, too, we're talking to Andy Hilton, Greg Bicouvaris, at Greg Bick on Twitter about the possibilities, too. You see where a lot of the Peninsula schools have to go on the road, like Heritage in the past. You know, they'll get to the postseason, but they're not a dominant team to host. Woodside, of course, even had to go on the road last year. They're probably the best team on the Newport News side. As far as the Hampton schools, obviously Phoebus, then everybody else is pretty much mediocre. Bethel has really had a very bad year.
Yes, they have. Bethel's had a bad year. Kickertan has rebounded. Menchville has been, unfortunately, Menchville. They're going to struggle to win a game this year. Denby, again, Menchville-Denby is going to be the game where one of those teams is going to get their win. Neither of those teams look like they're capable of competing with the likes of a Woodside or even a Gloucester, much less Phoebus or Hampton. That pretty much covers all of the Peninsula District, and generally the teams that have been halves in the past are the halves again in terms of haves and have-nots. You're looking at Phoebus and Woodside being the class of the Peninsula District this year.
Just talk about prognostication. We got a few more weeks left in the regular season, of course. It's going to end here before you know it. When you have 2 or 3 losses, there's no guarantee, let's say at Division 6 or 5, you're going to host a game. It's very, very difficult. It seems like right now Heritage has already got 2 losses. Woodside's got a loss. They might have more. But it seems like you have to almost have 1 or 2 losses max to host. Is that pretty much the case in 4, 5, and 6?
That is absolutely the case. And, of course, when you've got to have 2/3 of the teams in the region on the south side and 1/3 of the teams roughly on the peninsula, you end up with just a predominance of south side teams that can have a better record. With Phoebus taking a loss to Lake Taylor, that's actually not going to hurt them very badly because Lake Taylor's undefeated. Phoebus may be your one team that has a shot at being at home throughout the playoffs. However, Hopewell, who is in their region but up toward Richmond, Hopewell is undefeated still, and they have a good shot of hosting what might be the region final when it comes around to it. But otherwise, Phoebus is the one team that may host for the most part throughout the playoffs because in 6, you have Ocean Lakes and Oscar Smith undefeated. They're not going to meet each other because they're in separate districts. In Class 5, you have Indian River ruling the roost, so to speak, and Salem has only taken one loss at this point. In 4, you have, of course, the powerhouse Lake Taylor team, and you get down to 3 where you have Phoebus at the top of that class.
What are you going to be keeping an eye on here in October and November?
What we really have to keep an eye on is teams like Phoebus who have extra games to play. Even Lafayette at 4-0 has 6 games to play, and they were off last week because Bruton's had a problem fielding a team. Bruton did not even play their game against Lafayette this past Friday night. So Lafayette is 4-0. York is 5-0, speaking of Bay Rivers District. So York has a chance to challenge Lafayette, where Lafayette really has ruled that district for the last 6 years. We're going to be watching those top teams, watching how they finish the season, and from there you're looking at any middle-of-the-pack teams who might be able to rise up or might be able to follow through, and a team like Warwick, who's sitting at 4-1, who has really performed what seems like over their head at this point. They have a chance to finish at 8-2, 9-1, which would be a fantastic season for a team like Warwick.
Warwick has now moved on to 4-2. They've got a few losses, but absolutely great point indeed. One thing, happened earlier in the year during the offseason about Bruton, you just mentioned it. We mentioned it during our Heritage Woodside TV game, as well as some highlights that have gone on in 2018. Is that a bigger problem with high school sports in general, with parents and kids, where you can't even field a football team? You got to forfeit several games. Is that just a society and age where the parents today don't care as much about their kids in high school sports? The kids are apathetic. They're more onto their phone than playing, let's say, football, or giving up their time to have summer camp, whatever, to play football. Is that just a sign of the times, what's happened to Bruton?
That's certainly a part of it. There's all sorts of factors at work. You have parents that are less engaged with their kids. You have kids that are less engaged with social activities. You have kids that, as you mentioned, are tied into electronics and so forth, less willing or less interested in the physical work that football requires. And then on the other side of it, you have coaches that are exhausted from having all the work that they have to do. And when you have a football program that's not winning games like Bruton, unfortunately, they haven't been as strong over the past few years. It's hard to get the momentum generated in the hallways and in the classrooms at the school to have enthusiasm for a football program that's going to win 1 or 2 games in a year. Kids, unfortunately, want to play for a winner, and that's why you see schools like Oscar Smith, Ocean Lakes, in its day Hampton, now Phoebus, attracting transfer students just simply because of winning. And we can talk about recruiting separately, but realistically, kids want to play for a winner. And when there's not a mass amount of kids playing football at the school, and when the winning isn't happening, it's easier just to say, I'll rather not bother, rather than going through and playing and tolerating a long season of losing like what may happen at Bruton.
Speaking of winning and losing, Old Dominion got a great win against Virginia Tech, but you break it down, you process it after a while. This is a veteran senior team. If they were going to beat Tech, it would have been this year. But the thing is, Andy, even though they beat Tech, they'll probably still have a losing record. They won't go to a bowl game, and you got to wonder, anybody can hit the lottery once in a while. Tech, of course, lost Old Dominion. Old Dominion was due for beating a Power 5 program. They finally did it. Will this be a success if they go 2-10 or 3-9?
I think it certainly saves Bobby Wilder's job. It saves him from being on the hot seat. If he goes 3-9 or 2-10, he can hang his hat on that Virginia Tech win. Certainly, I wouldn't say that Bobby was on the hot seat before the game, but a bad season kind of brings into question what's going on at Old Dominion. It certainly buys some time, and it's certainly going to make some local recruits think again about playing at Old Dominion. And when I say think again, I mean on the positive side. If that team is capable of beating Virginia Tech with additional talent, they're capable of winning a lot more games. Ultimately, it'll be a positive for Old Dominion.
All right, leave us with your Twitter handle and how people can connect.
Well, it's fantastic. We have a Twitter account at Recruit757. We have Facebook at Recruit757, even Instagram at Recruit757. And, of course, you can find us under the UltimateRecruit.com umbrella. We cover Recruit Nova. We cover Recruit 804. And, of course, our home turf, the 757, is covered at Recruit757.com.
Very good. Andy, all the best. We'll talk to you later on in the football season.
Greg, thank you again for having me on Sports Scene. It's a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure. Andy Hilton right there from Recruit 757. Sports Scene will continue after these messages.
When it comes to automobile service in Hampton Roads, Fink's Car Care is the destination locals have counted on for decades. Family owned and operated, they specialize in transmission service, oil changes, state inspection, radiator service, tires, alignments, and showcase Win Automotive products. Fink's does it all. Military and senior discounts are available. Like them on Facebook and visit them at 2711 Victory Boulevard in Portsmouth. For more, log on to finkscarcare.com and call 485-5555 today. Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter at Greg Bick. Email bicogb@hotmail.com. Now back to Greg Bicouvaris in the Hampton Roads OnlineMall.com studios. It's now time for Greg's Highlights, presented by Hampton Roads OnlineMall.com.
Sports Scene is online on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Saturday in the radio from 10 to 11 on the Lighthouse, 100.1 FM. TuneIn.com, type in WPMH in the search bar, and of course AM 1010 as well. Hampton Roads Online Mall.com, browse, shop, visit, bookmark it, GJBTV.com, Hampton Roads Online Mall.com, and HRSMHOF.com. At Greg Bick on Twitter, GREGBIC. Interact 24/7. Our question presented by Buffalo Wild Wings and Newport News to our esteemed producer, Joe Daniel. Joe Daniel, do first impressions dictate your overall opinion about someone or a business?
I actually was just learning about this in my social psychology class at TCC, and to not get too scientific with it, I am trying to work on myself and not having first impressions necessarily dictate my overall opinion on that person. There are so many external situations and things that could have happened to that person that caused them to act in that way, to behave in that way, to dress in that way. And so instead of pinning it on that person like you're a bad person, you're clumsy, you're disorganized, you're OCD or something like that, instead of putting it on that, I'm trying to frame it in a context of their environment, and they are a result often of their environment. With businesses, though, I think it's a little different because to me, if I go into a business and I see dirty floors, dirty tables, and I see that everything is disheveled and dusty and gross, that is a consistency issue. Now I see that this is a behavior that's been for a while. If the waiter comes to me and that waiter is rude, you would want to think that the waiter is a part of the business, but still, I always come down to, okay, well, what could have happened? Did she just receive a phone call that, someone died? Receive a phone call, another bill collector calling again, bothering her at work. So I always just try to keep those in mind when dealing with individuals. But with businesses themselves and the way that it looks and the environment that it is, I do say that that is something that I think about when I consider going to that place again and whether or not I actually want to give them my business.
Right. For an individual, it could have been a hard night for them. They could have a really rough night, no sleep. But for a business, to me, there's no excuse because you have a pattern of a lot of employees working several shifts together collectively. So it's not individually, okay, clean your station, clean the bathroom, clean the table, clean the dishes. So it seems like a group didn't make the effort.
Right. Or the food is bad. The food comes out cold or it takes too long or something. That seems like it's more of a consistency issue. This is just how we do business as opposed to an individual issue, an individual interaction with someone.
Very good. That's highlights.
Mark your calendar for October 18th through the 20th as Saints Constantine and Helen Greek Orthodox Church presents the Newport News Greek Festival Fall Edition, an indoor event inside the Hellenic Center. Enjoy Greek food, beverages, desserts, dancing, arts and crafts, and much more. Located on 60 Traverse Road off exit 258B on I-64 with free admission and parking. Log on to newportnewsgreekfestival.org. See you October 18th through 20th for the Newport News Greek Festival Fall Edition.
Opa!
When it comes to automobile service in Hampton Roads, Fink's Car Care is the destination locals have counted on for decades. Family owned and operated, they specialize in transmission service, oil changes, state inspection, radiator service, tires, alignments, and showcase Win Automotive products. Fink's does it all. Military and senior discounts are available. Like them on Facebook and visit them at 2711 Victory Boulevard in Portsmouth. For more, log on to finkscarcare.com and call 485-5555 today. You are listening to Sports Scene with Greg Bicouvaris. Now, back to Greg.
And welcome back to Sports Scene as well, right here on 1010 AM, 100.1 FM, tunein.com. Type in WPMH in the search bar, GJB.TV.com, as well on YouTube every Saturday morning from 10 to 11, archived 24/7 on Twitter and YouTube. Our monthly regular guest, George McClain from The Marksman. George, happy day to you. How are you so far today?
Well, we're doing very well, Greg. How about yourself?
Very good, very good. Kind of an interesting fall. I guess we'll start off with that. The weather's been unseasonably warm. How does that affect hunting season, and when does hunting season come to fruition? Because it seems like it's different in different areas.
It really is, and it doesn't change the date what the temperature does. As far as when the different seasons start, it's just that how active the prey may be, the different animals that you're happen to be hunting, and what their particular season, how it starts, and where the hunters have to go to pursue this. So we get a lot of people in Virginia that will actually go hunt in West Virginia or in the western part of Virginia, where the mountain range comes down to get more out into the country. And then we have several that go over to the eastern shore, which is very, I'll say, heavily hunted, but it's all private reserves, if you will, where people will rent out their property for deer and that type of thing. Of course, deer season's a little bit later on than what we have right now.
I'll say this about deer season, though, George. Usually you're greeted by family members or neighbors or somebody when you go home to your driveway. I was greeted by 3 deer on my front yard in the evening. Obviously, you don't see as many deer during the daytime. They didn't want to leave. I had to put the bright lights on them. This has happened several times. It always happens around this time of the year. And then, of course, in November, it'll start getting dark at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, it's and deer have become over the last couple of years very overpopulated, and they're probably going to have to come up with a special off-season permit or allow several more takedowns to get this population reduced. It becomes a hazard to everyone, even like you say, going into your own driveway, but high-speed stuff, out on the interstate or any. It doesn't have to be an interstate, but any of your regular highways around here, you see them laying on the road or off to the side of the road where they've been hit and killed, and that damages vehicles and could cause an accident, and any of those types of accidents could be serious. So we don't like to see that happen. So they need to be regulated, and more so than what they are right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're safer in residential neighborhoods because people aren't speeding 55 to 70. You hope, but it's still kind of alarming when you get home at night and it's dark, and then you're just trying to get in your front door or your garage to park your car, and you have 3 deer surrounding your property. Talking to George McClain from The Marksman, and for the first-time hunters out there, George, and when they come to The Marksman, of course, there's a lot of do's and don'ts, and of course, you just don't get a gun and just start shooting, and there's a lot of protocol involved in using a gun as far as hunting as well.
Well, that's right. I mean, there's a couple things, as you said, involved. Number one, you need to have the maturity to be able to handle the firearm, and then you learn about the firearm, how to properly operate it, and the laws under which it can be used. And so, I mean, if you're coming into our range to shoot, we're primarily a handgun range. We do allow a couple of versions of long guns, but small caliber, 22. We will allow the 223/5.56, which is the AR-15. we allow those firearms, but only if you purchase and use our frangible ammo. When that frangible ammo has to be used, that's the frangible part that basically turns into dust. When it hits the backstop and does not damage the backstop, doesn't ricochet, doesn't do any of that nasty stuff. And the reason you have to use ours is because we've tested it. We know what works, that it fragments the way it's supposed to be, and it doesn't damage anything. We just don't have the time to test everybody's ammo that comes in. They tell us, well, this is frangible. We don't know that. We don't have time to test it. We're not going to test it. So if you want to shoot an AR, you can do that, but you have to use our frangible ammo that we have tested. For everybody's safety, you just have to have certain rules. That's one of them.
Yeah, and of course, you guys have gone through trial and error. As an owner, as an operator, you see what's trending. You see what people like. You see what the trends are in ammunition. You see what the trends are in guns and safety and so forth. And I guess you kind of base it a lot on past experiences with people, what they might like, or does each individual kind of have their own wants and needs?
Well, they will have their own wants and needs, but when it comes to the range, it comes into the maintenance and the safety. We're not going to allow somebody to come in there with anything that's going to cause damage. Just so you're a shooting range, the backstop's going to get damaged. Well, okay, there's a certain amount of that we expect, but undue damage. Something where someone brings armor-piercing ammo in there, which is totally not allowed, and if we catch anybody doing it, you'll be permanently banned from ever coming in and shooting again, because we check the ammo. And so if someone comes in and they have that, and they've had it hidden somewhere, they've smuggled it in to where they purposely tried to bypass our checks to get it in to shoot it. No matter how well you try to put something together to be good for the general public, you're always going to have those abusers who think they're above any rules, any regulations, that they're entitled to do whatever they desire to do, and those are the ones that typically will kind of ruin it for everybody. And we just have to keep an eye out, because we do see them every once in a while. Much to our own chagrin, I'd rather see everyone come in, abide by the rules. Everybody's happy, and foremostly that they are safe. I mean, that's the whole thing behind everybody is to keep everyone safe. And if you let someone on with the wrong ammo, you're anything but safe.
Talking to George McClain, the owner of the Marksman in Newport News, off of Warwick Boulevard, off of Jefferson Avenue. You can Google it, of course, GPS it too. Military Mondays and First Responder Fridays. How's that going?
Well, we're doing very well today. As a matter of fact, will be a 2 for Tuesday, which all Tuesdays are, and we call it 2 for Tuesday because you get 2 for the price of 1. So you can come in with a friend. If you're used to coming in by yourself and whatever you've been paying, you can bring a friend in at no additional cost. You can split it between the two of you, and now it's 50% each. So there's usually something going on every day. But the Monday and Friday programs seem to be going very well, and the 1st and the 15th are for our free military days. And when we say free, it's free range, the range fee. You don't have to pay, but there is still a $2 environmental fee. Everyone has to chip in on the filtration system that it takes. So this is for the filters. So we've got decent air to breathe while we're on there. So it's you don't want to call it a free military free day. It's military $2 day versus the regular rate. So something going on pretty much every day and all month long. But there are many folks come in to take advantage of that.
Very good. George McClain, owner of the Marksman, right there in Newport News. And what goes on in the fourth quarter of the year? Of course, it's a little bit different than, let's say, the summer, because the fall, you got hunting season, you have classes going on. There's always something going on at your facility.
Well, very true. We always have the DCS classes going on. As far as the concealed courses, they're always going on. We do those every other Sunday. Just had one this past Sunday, so we'll skip this Sunday coming up, and then the next Sunday will be the next class. And so if you want to come to any of those, call in to pre-register for the class, make sure that you have a seat. We look forward, to the holidays. Right now, we've got plenty of new guns, in stock in the store. So if you're looking, for a new handgun of some type, come in, check us out, see what we have. If we don't have it in stock, we certainly order it in for you. But training still big thing. We've got a lot of one-on-one training where folks want to come in and schedule with an instructor, either to learn to shoot or to learn to do it better or safer, make sure they're doing it right. We've got couples, husbands and wives, and some of their older children coming in where they've got firearms in the house, and then they want everyone to learn how to use them. So just a lot of training, and that's the big thing. But that's always the lacking ingredient in a safe environment, is people get firearms and then they don't get the appropriate training to learn how to use them. And so we push the training quite a bit, and it's really, that part of the business is really growing. So we're glad to be a part of that.
George, you're open 7 days a week. Give us your address and your hours.
Well, we're at 520 Industrial Park Drive in Newport News, and it's about kind of halfway between Denby Boulevard and Fort Eustis Boulevard. If you're looking, you can go up to Warwick or Jefferson. Either way, we're open from 10 a.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and noon until 6 p.m. on Sundays.
Very good. George, we look forward to talking to you in November. Stay safe. Have a great October.
Thank you, Greg. You do the same. Take care. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you. George McClain, owner of the Marksman, and Joe Daniel, like we said, no matter what time of the year, you always learn something from George about safety and overall just keeping an eye out on things, whether it's deer in your front yard or somebody, who's creeping.
Yeah, absolutely. You can never learn too much about safety. There's always going to be different scenarios, different environments, and different opportunities for mistakes to happen. So to be prepared for that, and that's the whole purpose of the safety training, is to be prepared. So you don't just freeze up, you don't just not know what to do. It's all to get you acclimated to all these unconventional scenarios that may occur, and you know how to respond responsibly and appropriately for your safety and the safety of others.
Sports Scene continues.
What tees you off? Presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
Always one of our favorite segments, What Tees Me Off, of course. Our good friends at HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Browse, shop, visit at Greg Bickle on Twitter. Joe Daniel, phone tag. That's never fun. Plain phone tag, text tag, email tag, and it just goes on and on and on. Like I'm trying to get a hold of my lawn guy to pay him, and it's constantly phone tag or text tag.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty rare thing. I have experience, at least with phone tag. I guess it is phone tag. It's just people don't answer their phones anymore. I don't know why. It's every time I try to call someone, they just rarely answer their phones. I'm always having to leave a voicemail. I'm always having to send a text. And then, like you said, they call me back half hour later or something, but nobody seems to. Everyone has their phone on them, but they never answer it. It's a weird phenomenon.
We've all gotten spoiled by caller ID first,
yeah,
and now it's like they'll respond to a text quicker than a phone call. But I'm sorry, some things do require a phone call, especially with work related and more immediate action.
Yeah, if the text takes more than one or two exchanges, that's a phone call. It needs to be clarified just in case there's any miscommunication.
Yeah, texting is very vague. Emails are very vague. When your friend sits in the back seat and their friend sits in the front seat to get you to talk to that person, that's awkward. First of all, if you go in my car, I dictate who sits in the front seat. One of my friends recently put their friend in the front seat and themselves in the back seat so I can have a forced conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why you would do that, because for me, it's stepping into that mindset. If I were with a buddy, I would want to be courteous, I guess. I'm looking at it in that sense. I want to be courteous to my friend and have him have the better seat, if you will, in quotation marks, better seat, and then I'll sit in the back seat. But yeah, if the motivation was so like, I want you to be friends with my friends, then I don't think that's a right way to go about it. But I think if it's like, if you're just honestly just wanting your friend to have the better seat, I think that's fine.
Yeah, teach his own. How about this? Paying a bill in person, and then there's always one or two people holding it up or saying, well, my phone needs this type of special attention, but it just seems like the lines just get longer and longer and longer.
Yeah. Like you said, with lines or having to call places to pay your bill over the phone or to correct something over the phone, it's just you call somewhere and they respond back saying, we are expecting unusually high caller volume. You're going to have to wait 20, 30 minutes or something like that. And that's never good. It always seems to be just these drastic, long, complicated problems that people go through.
I'll say this about grocery stores. They are getting better because you do have to pay your bill in line. When you buy your groceries, they have an attendant kind of at the checkout line to make sure you're okay because they realize people are on the go.
Which is why what I've been doing for a while is purchasing groceries online through Walmart. Some places do it Walmart, other places online. I think Target may start doing it as well. But grocery shopping online, and even if they don't have that specific brand or quantity that you ordered, they will actually help. And actually, they understand. It's actually been very, very good. So if you order 2 pounds of something and they don't have the 2 pound packet, they will just give you 2 1 pound packets. It's not like, oh, we don't have the 2-1, so we'll just do without. They actually do try to make it work.
Just like we had encyclopedias way back in the day, to me, there's no excuse in 2018, 2019 for a business to not have a website.
That's true. I know some don't have a website because they believe that Facebook solicits a better response from people. And I don't know, I guess depending on the business, depending on their demographic and who they're trying to target, it all just depends. But you're right. A lot of people I know won't take your business seriously unless you have an online presence of some sort. Most of the time it's a website, and not just a website, but a good website. I've been doing searching on like spooky forests and haunted trails and pumpkin patches, and these places have websites, but some of them are some of the worst websites I've ever seen. The tabs don't work, the hyperlinks don't work. They'll actually bring you to an invalid web page. It's just very disorganized and nothing works on it. So if you're going to have a presence, make sure that it works. Otherwise, people are just going to move on and find a better place.
And keep an eye on it and promote it too. Just promote it on social media, even on Twitter. That even helps as well. People who can't give you an answer, no matter what, just cannot make a decision, cannot give you a yes or no, just a maybe.
Yeah, there's always nuances in their mind or something, or maybe they're just fearful of committing to a yes or no answer. And sometimes, most of the time, I think it is needed for just a simple yes or no answer. Are you hungry? And don't overcomplicate it. Are you hungry in this moment, right now? Are you hungry? Don't add any more variables or complexities to it.
Usually on a road trip, somebody's got to stop and go to the bathroom, too, when you don't expect it as well. All right, how about this awkward thing? When someone says they're moving on from a relationship, yet they go on a road trip with an ex.
Wow. Yeah, that's...
business or pleasure.
Yeah, that's crazy. It probably sounds a lot more pleasure than business, but that is awkward. Unless they work together. I mean, if it's unavoidable, then it is what it is. You know, it's unavoidable. They work together, and then that's just what the company said. Like, you two need to go together for this thing. That's unavoidable. You can't really change that unless you really go out of your way, and maybe that's just not what the company, the business, the manager wants. They want to try to put their best foot forward, and if you and your ex happen to be the two best employees for this one particular job, it is what it is. Now, if you're going after pleasure, I think it's a little hinky, but business, I think, is completely different.
The last couple of things, too. We live in a very hit or miss world. People that you talk to once and never talk to again.
Yeah, I mean, that happens a lot, I think. Or you talk to them once and then they add you on Facebook. That's another big thing, too. And then, like, I have so many friends that add me, and I feel bad for just ignoring some of them. I have ignored quite a few, and I still do feel bad for not accepting their friend request. And some of them, it's just like, it's a friend of a friend. I've never even met some of these people, I don't think, because I don't remember them. I've never even met them, but because we have 55 mutual friends together, well, I'll just go ahead and add you then.
Yeah.
Nah, I don't think so, man.
I mean, I've got friend requests. I have no idea who these people are,
Yeah.
and they're going to be like deleted. I'm sorry, I don't have no hard feelings. Last thing as well, we can all relate to this. We forget stuff in the morning. You and I have talked about that on What Teased Me Off. Here's what's worse: leaving something on the road when you're traveling.
Yes, like at a hotel or something. Yes, absolutely. There is nothing worse, and it's always you've gone too far to turn back, and you try to call. Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't find that lost iPad. Didn't you? Didn't you find it?
How many computers do you have in your hotel again?
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, just snuck away, but I can see it gets stolen or misplaced in the restroom. That's what tees me off. I want to thank our guests today as well, Grant Paulsen, Andy Hilton, George McClain. For more, go to gjbtv.com. Hit the YouTube link for archive shows, at Greg Bick on Twitter as well, all powered by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com and HRSMHOF.com. For Joe Daniel, I'm Greg Bicouvaris. We'll talk to you soon.